I'm 32, juggling family, working full-time, and earning a bachelor's degree. At University of Phoenix, I earn career-relevant skills with every 5-week course. Skills I can use now, not just after graduation.
Earn skills in weeks, not years. Visit phoenix.edu.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the G-Spot. I am joined by the super smart, super sharp, excellent writer Roe McDermott, and I will admit I was fangirling a bit for this episode when I met her in person, and I was so delighted when she agreed to come on and give me her time and her brain for an hour. I've been following her Instagram, but also like reading her writing for years now. And in this episode, and I had no doubt she was going to just absolutely knock it out of the park, she provides so many insights into what I would say are very common but complex situations, particularly around relationships where one person maybe feels entitled to sex, or one person feels they're being rejected all the time. The other person can feel resentful, like they don't want to have sex with their partner for any given reason. So we really get into that. But she is a way of explaining things that's really articulate and makes it all just feel a bit more accessible and a bit more, straightforward. She knows her stuff. She references lots of different writers and things you can look up after the episode if you like as well. So it's a really, really, really brilliant one. Again, full of really helpful insights and advice. So as always, give us a lovely 5-star rating and a glowing review if you like. Subscribe to get your bonus bits and enjoy the episode. So today on the G-Spot, I'm joined by writer Roe McDermott. Welcome, Roe.
Hi, lovely to meet you.
I'm so glad
to
finally meet you. I was talking to Ivan. I was like, I think I started following like your Instagram page, let's say, and really become aware of you and your writing. It was 2020, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And then ever since then, like I've obviously read loads of your bits and just see you online all the time. I'm getting to see the red hair and the eyeliner and everything in real life, because I think it's such an iconic look as well. I really do. You have a look, you know?
Yeah, it kind of started when I was 12 and hasn't changed. So it's a look, it's an emotional safety blanket, it's a pathology, but it's here to stay.
Yeah. It's consistent.
It
suits you. So you kindly said yes to come on. Hopefully you're pretty open talking about sex and relationships and that as a person, like in general.
I've had to learn how to be. I mean, both from I think I started getting interested in speaking about sex because I think I was a bit of a precocious shit as a kid, basically, and a little bit rebellious. And there were a lot of things that I'm sure we'll get into of like, I didn't like that people weren't talking about it and thought that it was really important, and then started writing about it a little bit, and started a blog, and then there was a website fanny.ie that was kind of short-lived, but we had great writers. It was like Louise Bruton and Jen Gannon and Mary McGill and Louise McSharry and stuff. So we just kind of did it ourselves, and I was writing about sex, and then started writing for the Dublin Inquirer a little bit. And then, because, I've been working in journalism since I was 22, but I just had a sense of, I think this is really important to write about it. And at that stage, like very few people were. But I was like, no, I need to understand this. I went off to San Francisco and studied sexuality studies. And so I've been writing about it for a long time now. But yeah, so.
That's cool. So, San Francisco of all places.
Which
that's a great place to
amazing.
Be studying that. Yeah.
And I was in San Francisco State University, which was the first university who had a sexuality studies department and an ethnic studies department. And it was a state school but like really brilliant, and like there wasn't a straight white guy in our entire cohort, and everybody was really diverse. And San Francisco was amazing. But it was just like education-wise, it was amazing. In terms of cultural education, just like moving to the States and getting a different perspective, and I think getting more insights into like race and racism and stuff was fascinating. And being in a country that wasn't defined by the Catholic Church was pretty intense. But then I was also there when Trump got elected. So it was an education in a lot of ways. But I've been writing about it since,
Amazing. And we'll get into, I suppose, kind of the different bits even you have written about. And because do you ever find actually that maybe this is just me, because obviously my job is talking about sex a lot, and sometimes I share my own bits. Like, you know, I'm quite vulnerable at times about my own sexual experiences, both good and bad. And then sometimes I'll see my mom liking something on Instagram, and I'm like, oh, mom. And I love my mom, and she's so open, but I'm like, does she realise what that reel is actually about? Do you know what I mean? Do you ever, like, does it ever come into your head of, oh, I wonder who's going to read this? Or do you just not think of that anymore?
No. Do you know, my relationship with that has really changed over the years. I think, because one of the reasons I started writing about sex and got interested in speaking about it in sex education was I was sexually assaulted, as a lot of women are, and that happened to me quite early, and I hadn't slept with anyone, and I was so aware, like that happened, I was just gone 17 when I started college, and it happened in the first kind of month of college, and that for women who are assaulted when they're in college, it often happens like during their first year or during the start of term, because people are vulnerable, people don't know each other, there are a lot of parties, like predators are on the lookout for people who don't have social supports yet, all of these things. But that happened really early. And my parents are very feminist and brilliant and very open and wonderful. But I didn't tell them. But I was, because I had a sense of shame around it. And I was just so aware of the idea of, like, if someone had come up and punched me in the face, I would go home and tell my mom and dad. But because it was sexual assault, there was a shame and a silencing around it.
That's such a good way of putting it, actually. The comparison between the two crimes.
Yeah. And so I was so aware, like, that's a problem. And I think that really started my drive to, like, talk about it. Because I was like, if we aren't talking about sex generally, we're also not talking about sexual assault and sexual violence. And so that was kind of my impetus. But when I started writing and, you know, did a master's in journalism and always was writing, but I wrote a lot of personal stuff, and I wrote about my assault, and I was in an emotionally abusive relationship when I was like 22 to 24, and I wrote a lot about that. And so there was quite young, like in my 20s, I put a lot of myself out there in very vulnerable ways. And I don't regret it at all. But I think something that I kind of copped later was there's putting work out into the world because you want to talk about the topics and address the topics and make space for other people to address the topics. And thankfully, I do think that happened. But I think there was definitely part of me that was writing in such a vulnerable way to kind of be saved. Like, I think part of me in my head was like, if I share all this vulnerability on the internet, you know, people will arrive at my doorstep with pitchforks going, we will avenge you. And that doesn't happen. Like, people were lovely, but it wasn't leading me to, like, you know, offline real connections with people that I think would have actually been helpful. So I think I do still write. I don't write as personally anymore, and don't put it as much out there. But I think for me, that feels like a healthy place. I think the level I was doing it at, the reasons, I don't regret it, but the reasons weren't always kind of just educational. I was turning to the audience to kind of heal me, and that wasn't the relationship the audience had signed up for. Do you know what I mean? So I think just getting a little bit older, also like healing from a lot of stuff, I've gone, I don't need to, I'm not looking for that from external people as much. But happy to talk about everything. But I think, just my reasons for talking about things have changed, which feels good.
I resonate with a lot of that though, even myself. Like I've put a lot of really personal stuff out there and I don't regret any of it like yourself. And I think some of it has actually been in its own way part of the healing process.
Yes.
And it is lovely to get those messages of support and even for one woman to message you and say, it's helped me in some way, which I'm sure your writing has helped loads of people as well. But it's nice to be in that place where, you've maybe gone through vulnerably sharing a lot, but you don't, as you said, feel the need to do it quite as much.
Yeah.
More selective, I guess, isn't it?
A bit more selective. I also think I say that I'm 4 years sober from Twitter because I was on Twitter for a long time.
I couldn't cope with it at all.
No, and I think it was quite bad for me because I had a sexual assault and an abusive relationship quite early. And then I got into another emotionally abusive relationship when I was like around 28. And that was because I hadn't really healed the stuff that had led me to be so vulnerable in the first relationship. And I think this happens a lot with people. And basically the second relationship kicked off a really bad bout of PTSD, which I think had been there for a while at a lower level and kicked off. But one thing about PTSD is you can get into very black and white thinking with PTSD because evolutionarily wise, if you've been through a trauma, your brain is just hypervigilant and going, I need to keep you safe.
Yes.
Evolutionarily wise, it's safer to assume that a bush is a bear than the other way around.
100%, yeah.
So you're constantly looking for threats. And my PTSD, it made me very paranoid and very defensive and very irritable. And I basically read everything as an attack. And so it was very, defensive. And I assumed the worst intentions of everybody for the bout was about 18 months to 2 years.
Wow.
I was a nightmare to be around. Because I think in my head, I'm principled and, feel very passionate about things. But the way my brain was operating was everyone is dangerous and you have to protect yourself. And I think the Twitter atmosphere at the time fed that and enabled that a lot.
Oh, of course it did. Yeah.
And so I had to go, what kind of person do I want to be actually? And I much rather lead with empathy and go, there's a lot of traumatized bunnies out there and people muddling their way through with the best intentions. And I'd much rather appeal to that side of them than be like, you phrased this wrong. I'm no longer associating with you. So getting off Twitter was vital,
Yeah, 100%. I can see that. And then we're all turning on each other. And something like Twitter is perfect for that. And it's so easy even to just a tweet or whatever that is dogpiling on someone else.
Completely.
Even if you're not tweeting or writing or what do they call it now? Xing? They're on X. I don't give a shit. I'm not on it.
Elon wants me to call it X, so I won't.
No, I don't either. It's stupid. I hate it. Whatever they call it.
My point was that getting off Twitter as well, I think made me far less interested in voicing my own opinions about things and more invested in learning from other people. So I think that's led me to write a little bit less about myself and more go, here are other people doing really great ideas as well. So a little less personal revelation and more exploration, I think, which is lovely.
That's great. And I think you kind of start to, if you look back at the things you wrote about in the earlier days, if you were to write about those things again right now, you probably have a different perspective now on different things that happened, if that makes sense. That I'm just thinking of myself even that when I used to write about my abusive relationship, I was very much I was still kind of in a place, I think, of anger, which is totally fine. And I'm I'm better than him. He's a piece of shit. It was very, binary. It was very much about me as a victim, which is fine. There was space for that. And now when I think about it, when I talk about it, when I share anything about it, it's just from a different place where I'm not particularly for him, but it's actually just opening up more of I suppose, a compassionate space of towards myself and towards, again, not him specifically, but that he's not a monster and I'm not a victim. And I'm not buying into that binary anymore because that keeps me feeling powerless and helpless. And you know what I mean? I'm not saying you will think that about whatever happened to you, but it's that those pieces of writing, whatever it is, needed to exist then.
Yes.
And you need to put that out and get that out. And then we're allowed to change our lens on things and our opinion.
There's a writer I love, Maggie Smith, who wrote a memoir called this place could be beautiful. And it's about her marriage breaking down, because basically she became really famous because she has this poem called Good Bones, which went really viral, and she got loads of attention and started getting loads more writing gigs. And her husband couldn't deal with her success basically and had an affair. And so she wrote this memoir, and she was doing interviews and people were saying, you know, you wrote this quite soon after your husband left and whatever, and what do you think will happen in 10 years if you read this memoir and your opinions have changed or your emotions changed? And she was like, yeah, that's the nature of memoir. You're writing from wherever you are emotionally at that time.
Yeah.
And it's a reader's responsibility to understand that how you feel about something or who you are as a person might change over time. And this is just a snapshot of where you were.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, when you're talking about compassion for your ex, do you mean that like personally for him, or in a general people who act out and abuse other people? I can see that there are factors that go into that, or what do you...
Yeah, I suppose more the latter of what you said there, because I don't really like talking about or thinking about him in the sense that I'm like, I just don't find him that interesting anymore. He's just not interesting. It's just so textbook, like sad, scared, lonely boy turns into angry, violent man. Like we see this over and over and over. Completely. I'm not diminishing that. I'm just saying that's it. There's not much more there as far as I'm aware. Yeah. I don't want to know what else is there. But yeah, I suppose because I found that I was getting, dare I say, a little bit man-hatey. And you know what? Sometimes I think we need to go through that phase, because even if I say hate men, I'm not going out and beating them. I'm not actually harming any of them. This is more in my own circles of, I'm so frustrated with men. Yeah. But then it was starting to kind of eat me up and really affect my worldview in a way that was, I just found it just wasn't actually helpful. Like
it was like shrinking you rather than expanding your world.
100%. So I kind of just had to start looking at it a bit like, okay, you know, that things happen, I suppose, to make people do awful things. Yeah. And that made me feel better as well, because I'm like, oh yeah, despite what he said, it wasn't my fault.
It wasn't your fault. And it's not you prompting someone to turn monstrous.
Because literally that's what he was like. And I remember he said, this will happen you again, as in with another man. I'll never forget that. He said that this will happen to you again. And it's funny because I'm like, it hasn't at all, ever. Oh my God, so, you know, I think there's a bit of healing in like, and then looking at, I suppose, the men in my life or the men I knew that were doing just wonderful things and just like such. So that's kind of what I mean, is that just, probably not phrasing it overly.
No, I think that's really important. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about over the past couple of years.
I know. Let's bring it back to sex, relationships, the good, the bad, all of that. So you've obviously had negative experiences in relationships. So now, if you were to describe what, as you sit here now, your understanding of a healthy relationship, first of all, a romantic healthy relationship, if you could think of 3 words that sum up what you want from a healthy romantic relationship, and then I might ask you for 3 words for a healthy sexual relationship.
Oh, God. Right. Okay.
Yeah, they can be the same, but
sure.
Let's start with romantic.
I used to hate when people said this because it felt like such a cliche. I think kindness is
I love it. It's so important.
Underrated. Yeah. And just both of you being as kind as possible to each other.
Okay.
I think equality is huge to me, because I think there are, like, I'm bisexual, but I'm in a relationship with a man and love him very much. But I have seen so many relationships with brilliant feminist women, feminist men, but if it's a heteronormative relationship, there can be this slide into gender roles very equally. And I think there's a lot of inequality around not just stuff like domestic labor, but like emotional work. So I think equality and both of you striving for it is really, really important.
Yeah.
And then I think expansive feels like something like I want to be in a relationship where you're both growing. Yeah. And I don't even think you need to grow at the same rate or in the same direction, but you need to be willing to witness and recognize each other's growth.
Yes.
And I think I've gotten a lot of letters into the column, particularly from older men who feel blindsided when their wife of however many years has left. And their line is always like, well, I'm the same. I'm like, Yeah,
Maybe
your
that's
wife isn't.
the problem, though.
And
Yeah.
you can be the same, but have you witnessed and recognized your partner's growth?
Yeah.
And have you met them where they're going
Yeah.
and met their changing needs and growing needs? So I think for me, a relationship that is expansive means it's adding to my life and it's opening me up in different ways, and we're doing that for each other. But also there's room for that growth and evolution and a willingness to go whatever way you're growing. Like, I want to see it and I want to be there. So that feels important to me.
I love that expansiveness, growth. Yeah, and I agree. I think that's so important. Okay, what about a sexual relationship then? 3 words. A good sexual relationship.
I grew up reading
life.
Dan Savage, so immediately, like, his GGG framework. Have you heard this?
No.
Dan Savage, so he's an advice columnist.
Yeah.
He's a gay guy. I think he's now late 50s. So, like, he had some dodgy stuff. He was very crap about bisexuality and stuff back in the day. I think he has evolved, thankfully.
Of course.
But he always had this thing of, if you're in a long-term monogamous relationship, you need to be good, giving, and game. So you need to, like, hopefully your sex life is good in the sense of, you know what your partner likes and you get skilled at it.
Stunning.
Giving is that you're generous to each other in your sexual desires and your sexual life. And game is not that you have to do everything, but you're willing to be like, oh, I'll consider this or I'll try this. And even if you're not game for doing stuff, which is absolutely fine because boundaries and desires and preferences and all that, that you're game for your partner having interests that you mightn't be up for, but you're not shaming them for it. So that's immediately coming to me, good, giving, and game.
Good, giving, and game.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And that game piece is even, being game to consider something.
Yeah.
Or think about something. You can say no. What I work on a lot is, and I see more content about this now as well, is the power of maybe.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, the people I'm working with, they're like, I'm just shutting down sex. That term is used a lot, shutting down.
Yeah.
I'm saying no. And I said, that's fine. You're entitled to say no. But then they're ending up, they're never having sex, right? And it's like, and with a no, there's nowhere to go with a no. There's nowhere, and then people feel rejected or people feel resentful that they keep asking. There's so many different sides to it and perspectives. So I'm like, we kind of need to explore the maybe.
Yeah.
Now that's a whole other topic, but you just kind of reminded me of that, of like, it doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything. It just means to be willing to, like, think about it.
Absolutely. And I think some really important caveat is, I think, unfortunately, when we talk about people being game or being up for things or being generous, I think that is disproportionately applied to women who are in partnerships with men, that they're expected to go along with a lot of things sexually.
Okay, yeah.
And I think even like sex positivity, which is obviously such a gorgeous thing, I feel like the past few years it's been weaponized in the culture a lot, particularly against young women. Yeah. Of this idea of like, oh, well, if you're sex positive, like, don't shame me and you should do this and don't be prudish, which is completely not what sex positive. Yeah, it's not what it means at all. And it's being weaponized in this way. And I think there is a pressure on women to fulfill men's sexual desires and fulfill men's sexual needs. And actually, I think it needs to be switched. And I think there needs to be, like, men in particular need to be very game in learning about their female partner's desire, in learning different ways of approaching desire, and need to be game about intimacy and connection and care, not just sex, because I feel like sex has always historically been centered on, I remember like the sex ed I received, there's nothing about women's pleasure.
No, of course not.
And sex was always defined as like penile vaginal penetration, and it was all like, it was just leading to a man's orgasm. And that was the point of sex, that was the climax of sex, that was the end of sex. And women's pleasure was never centered.
Yeah, of course.
And also I think there's a huge issue of women in long-term partnerships feeling like they're kind of duty-bound to give regular sex.
Give it even. That sort of feels
or
like,
put up with it.
Yeah.
And there's a lack of curiosity about care in sex and the type of sex that you're having.
Yeah. I'm a firm believer that when it comes to sex, there's always more to learn and always more to explore. And that's why we have weekly bonus content of the G-Spot available when you sign up to Headstuff Plus. So that is double the episodes. And not only do you get all of that, but you also get access to all the bonus content of the other Head Stuff podcasts. You get ad-free listening, and it's an amazing way to support my work, which I really, really do appreciate. You get all of this for just €5 plus VAT per month, and you can sign up by going to headstuffpodcast.com. Thank you so much and enjoy the rest of the episode.
Hi everyone, Afif here, alongside Anne, the hosts of the Baby Tribe podcast, inviting you to Baby Tribe Live at Smock Alley Theatre on September 3rd at 8 p.m.
That's right, our very own Baby Tribe Live podcast goes on stage with Stephanie Preisner and Dr. Nicola Fox-Hamilton. Tickets are on sale now. Grab yours from the Smock Alley Theatre website.
See you under the lights.
Some people think nature is like this, but actually it's like this. That's why Columbia engineers everything we make for anything nature can throw at you. Columbia, engineered for whatever.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
What you're even touching on there really feeds into our dilemma. So I'm going to give you the dilemma that came in. Dear Grace, is it bad that I've been basically denying my partner sex because I'm fed up with him? I feel like I do so much more than him in our relationship and the house, etc. I feel like he doesn't deserve sex, but I know that I can't say no forever. What do I do?
Oh, garbage. Throw the whole man away. In my column, I have a word count of about 1,200 words, and every Christmas I ask my editor, can I just do some really quick answers so I can just say dump him? And
one
that
sentence.
is coming to mind. I feel like this is so common. Like it's so common.
It is.
And it comes down to ideas of equality and labour and duty. Mm-hmm. And I've been reading a lot of divorce memoirs lately.
Okay.
and the research is in, folks, marriage isn't great for women. Because women in, again, straight relationships and straight marriages end up doing so much more of the domestic labour. They end up doing more of the care work, whether it's young kids or elderly family members or both. They end up doing, Ellie Anderson is an academic who's just come up with this brilliant concept of hermeneutical labour.
Okay.
And she basically says hermeneutical labour is the kind of exhausting process of being emotionally aware about yourself and your moods. It's about regulating yourself. It's being about attuned to how you're feeling and reacting to things. And she says that women are socialised to do this for ourselves, a huge amount. We're also socialised to do it for the men in our lives. So we're almost compensating for the lack of socialization that men have to be emotionally intelligent and to express their emotions.
And could that be a safety mechanism as well with women?
Oh, completely. Like the idea of
our
vigilance.
brain kind of it kind of, we from a young age scan our environments, we scan the people around us for a threat.
Yes.
Maybe more. I don't mean naturally as in we're born like that, but like from...
No, we're socialized
Yeah, exactly.
too. And then I think if you have like any form of people-pleasing tendency, the idea of I have to prove my worth constantly. So that means proving that I understand him completely.
Yeah, and he's happy with me. And
then like I was, I'm sure you had some of the same, like after an abusive relationship, you 100%. Get so tuned in because for safety, you need to know exactly where they are mood-wise. You need to know if there's an explosion coming, and you start regulating your own behaviour so much to try and not set them off, even though it's not your fault.
Nope.
But I think so women are doing emotional work, they're doing domestic work, they're doing childcare work, they have the mental load of the household all the time. And I also think there's an emotional labour with sex a huge amount of time, and emotional labor is getting thrown around a lot in kind of a therapy speak way of like basically like any effort in a relationship I don't want to do. But emotional labor was coined by the sociologist Arlie Hochschild, and she was looking at women particularly in like service industry jobs like flight attendants, waitresses, customer care workers who had to perform enthusiasm or perform happiness or cheerfulness, even though the situations were dire. So flight attendants who were getting groped or have horrible customer service, and they were told to keep smiling and keep really cheerful. And it showed that there was a disconnect between the performance, the emotional performance they were putting on for the people and what they were feeling. And it led to them often disconnecting from their emotions.
Yeah.
I think women do this a huge amount. And I think women do it with sex a huge amount. Because if you're in a relationship where you are being treated like a maid, a childcare worker, a mother, a therapist, and then you're expected to have sex with your partner, because as a good, I'm saying this absolutely in quotes, a good female partner, you should be providing regular sex. I think a lot of women have sex that, again, they consent to, but they're not enthusiastic about. They're doing out of a sense of, well, like, I need to provide regular sex for my husband or whatever. And it disconnects them from their own experience of sex and sexuality. And I think that feels like everything that's coming up with this person who's writing in, like they're doing more work than their husband or their partner. They're feeling disconnected from sex, but they're also feeling this sense of guilt of, like, even the language of I've shut down sex or I'm not having sex with them. There's a
denying
sense of
them, like
denying
it's a right,
them,
you know,
like it's a right. And I do think there's a huge issue with how we've normalized men feeling like sex is a right.
Yeah.
Like, you know, marital rape laws didn't come into the 90s.
I know, that's so scary to think about. Like,
we've normalized the idea of women feeling like it is their duty to provide men regular sex. And we've normalized men's sense of entitlement to regular sex. And, like, you know, I've written columns and talked about people, you know, who are going through dry spells with their partner or whatever, and talked about, you know, scheduling sex. And I think that's a good, like, people are busy. And in the same way you schedule, oh, here, we're going to watch Traders on Sunday night. Like, you know, are we really busy? We're going to be tired. Let's carve out some time. And so and then I realized I had to clarify, like, schedule time. So if you want to have sex,
it can happen.
It can happen. Yeah. Not you've scheduled sex, and so if you don't want to, your partner can go, well, it's on the schedule. Like, and I had to clarify that because there is a rhetoric around people having a right to sex. You don't have a right to sex. No. Like, if you're having sex, you have the right for that sex to be consensual and enjoyable. Nobody has the right to sex.
No. And something that's coming up for me to add on to all that, because I see this in my work a lot, is that men sometimes, the way they think about sex, and again, this could be from how they're socialized as well. Again, it's very much about the sex, what's happening in the bedroom, and they forget about everything that's happening outside of the bedroom. It's not an isolated act, and foreplay isn't just the going down on someone for 5 minutes. It's everything that's happening on the day-to-day. That's all part of foreplay. And also, a lot of women I work with say, in as many words, some people literally say this, some people kind of say it in a roundabout way, that they feel like his mother.
Yes.
So it's like, I'm like his mother, that he also gets to fuck. And that is not going to make you as a wife or girlfriend or partner feel sexy and sexual around this person and want to have sex with them. So there's a lot at play there.
Because if you're being treated like someone's mother and someone's therapist, do you know what good mothers and therapists have in common? They don't want to fuck their sons and their patients.
I've heard that.
You're not attracted to them. And
completely.
And that, I think that idea of desire is really important, because I think Emily Nagoski has written a lot about this, of the idea of, and this is kind of broad strokes, and of course there are differences in individuals, but a lot of men would experience spontaneous desire. So they, out of nowhere, doesn't matter what's happening around them, they get the urge and they go, okay, I want to have sex. And a lot of women would experience contextual or responsive desire. So they need the context to be right. They're, you know, they won't feel an immediate, oh, I want to have sex right now. But if they get intimacy, or if there's a makeout session or whatever it is, then their arousal will come, and it's responsive to what is happening around them. And I think a lot of men don't tune into that. And we don't teach men a lot of the time, and some men just don't want to learn of how to tap into women's desire and instead stay in the space of, well, I feel horny, so why aren't you?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what are you doing to create the context of that desire, which isn't just like foreplay, but that's like, are you helping out in the house? Are you making sure she's not stressed or overworked? Are you acting in a respectful, romantic way? Like, not in the half an hour before, but generally, are you creating space in your relationship for desire to form? And I think for women, having the freedom and the mental headspace and the sense of safety and respect and consistent affection allows them to get to a place of, I feel like a sexual being much easier, and I see my partner as a sexual being, not a son or someone I'm picking up after.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, I think men, I have a quote from Bell Hooks on this, because we don't socialize men to express their emotions or tap into their emotions in a lot of way. I think men turn to sex as kind of an answer for a lot of emotional needs.
Yeah.
And Bell Hooks says, men come to sex hoping it will provide them with all the emotional satisfaction that would have come from love. Most men think that sex will provide them with a sense of being alive, connected, that sex will offer closeness, intimacy, pleasure. And more often than not, sex simply does not deliver the goods. This fact does not lead men to cease obsessing about sex. It intensifies their lust and their longing. And I think that's really interesting of men, and again, I see this with men writing in this column going, you know, oh, my wife and we have 2 kids and life is busy, but she's not having sex with me. And I'm like, look at all the things she is doing for you and your family.
Yes. Yeah.
And the amount of sex you're having becomes the one measure of how healthy the relationship is. And it becomes the one thing that men latch onto and go, well, this is missing. And it's like, well, for now, but also, what are you doing to create this dynamic? And are you overlooking all the other ways that you are being shown love and affection and partnership?
That makes sense completely, yeah. And even sex as sometimes the main outlet or source, of physical affection for men is another thing. Whereas we might have more hugs and cuddles and whatnot with friends and, you know, whoever. Just as women generally.
Yeah, completely.
I kind of see that sometimes as well, that sex is where men get, apart from, you know, sport and sex. Really, really interesting. So I suppose with this dilemma, look, we're obviously, you know, as with all these type of dilemmas, and even in your column, we don't have all the information. We're missing a lot of context here. I hate the term devil's advocate, but just to put in another lens to this. Sometimes as well, I've worked with women who have enabled a really unhealthy dynamic for a long time. Completely. And I'm not shaming them, but I'm like, you're in a resentful, angry stage, which is fine, but it also helps to look at yourself.
Completely.
What have you enabled and what has been the payoff of that? It's probably what you learned and it felt safe for a while, and now you're thinking, oh wait, this actually doesn't work in real life. So, you know, I'm just conscious of kind of adding that in as well, that sometimes there's plenty of men who absolutely want to understand how to connect or how to do more or what they need to do. And I suppose it's easy for us because I've been in the situation with an ex where it's like my mind goes straight to, he's fucking useless. But actually, you know, I mean, my current partner is fantastic, but we still need to communicate about these things. So there might be no communication happening up to this point. And now we're at it's a tricky dynamic.
And to continue being devil's advocate, I also think there's an issue of if you are not having sex with someone because you're not feeling desirous of them, or the relationship doesn't feel in a space where you're feeling sexy and like sex would be a lovely thing, it is one thing. Withholding sex because you're angry and because you are trying to create distance
as a punishment
isn't great.
No.
And that difference is felt in a relationship. Like, you know, the difference between someone going, you know, I'm wrecked and not in the mood, or it's not been a good week or whatever, and someone like turning away from you in bed and not touching you at all. Like, you can feel that anger. And I think if you're at a space where you're like, I want to punish my partner, that you need to be talking. You need to be, if you want this relationship to last, you need to move towards whatever the vulnerability and the emotion you're feeling is, rather than withdrawing further. Because that's also, it's going to create either withdrawal on both sides, or put him in a position where he's pursuing, you're withdrawing, and then you're resenting him for pursuing because he's trying to bridge some kind of distance and maybe doing it in a clumsy way, or maybe focusing more on sex when you should be focusing on the emotional connection. Yeah. But if you're just withdrawing, you're in a bad spot. So,
yeah. And like what the writer asked was, is it bad that I'm doing this? But I think they've answered their own question, because they've also said, I know this can't go on forever. So you kind of know that. I'm not saying it's bad, but it's not healthy. It's not a place you want to stay in. You obviously want this to change. Yeah. So I suppose if I were to sum up, when she asked, what do I do? I would probably say you need to start with what could be some very difficult conversations. Yep. If I give a quick tip for that is, again, do plenty of reflection beforehand of, what exactly, be specific, what exactly you're not happy with, how that connects to sex and your desire. And also, it's not all, you don't do this, you never do this. It's more, I need you to do more of this.
Yes.
I really appreciate it. I'm just conscious, I don't want sugarcoating and tiptoeing around each other, but I think sometimes if we go in, like all guns blazing, it just can end up in this kind of conflict that goes round and round. So I think sometimes entering it as well, knowing, just kind of taking as well a bit of accountability for what maybe you have enabled, but that it's ending now and things need to change. Because this person does obviously deserve, better than this.
Completely. And I think there's a lot of looking at, leaving sex aside, looking at the dynamic, what has led you to getting fed up, and say, this is causing me to feel resentful. It's shutting down my desire for you. It is negatively impacting our relationship. I need this to change. And part of that is absolutely asking him to step up in the way he needs to step up. And part of that is putting down things that he didn't ask you to pick up in the first place. If you're going above and beyond doing all this work, and you're choosing to keep doing that work to that standard, first of all, you're not giving him space to step up.
True.
But also, how are you enabling the dynamic by keeping going, well, it's expected I'll do this. Is it? And how can you flip that expectation and go, I'm not doing this anymore? Yeah. And so either you step up or it's not getting done. But the way your relationship is right now, it's not working. So put down some of the stuff.
Yeah.
And then you can start talking about, okay, well, we're going to get our relationship to a better place where I don't feel as resentful. Then let's focus on creating intimacy and what could physical affection look like now? Again, leave sex. Because I think a huge thing that happens, particularly when couples haven't had sex in a while, is that I think women in particular can get very nervous that any physical intimacy might be used as an attempt to start sex.
Yes.
So women will be like, I don't let him kiss me. I don't let him touch me because I think he's going to try escalate this. Yeah. And then if you shut down all physical affection, that's just creating distance as well.
Yeah.
So how can you create, first of all, the environment where you want to be physically affectionate? How can you embrace physical affection that just gets you back to a space of intimacy and care and feeling affection for each other? And then looking at the sex you're having and how is the sex working for you? Is talking to your partner about what awakens your desire, talking about that idea of contextual desire of actually it really helps me get into a sexy space if the house is sorted and all the things are clear and we've discussed all the financy bits, so I'm not anxious about it and I'm not feeling alone in our partnership and then expected to have sex. So, but start at the basics, start at the root cause of what's gotten you to this place of resentment, and it sounds like that's a lot of the unequal dynamic in the relationship. So start there. Something needs to give.
Definitely. There's probably a lot of reflection and accountability needed there on both sides, and kind of reflecting on what you have communicated, what you haven't, and if you are letting him, something else I work on, step up and do things, just be prepared that because it's sometimes but he'll do it wrong. And it's like, okay, like, again, it's not, like, we're not, don't treat him like a child. Like, let him do it wrong. And whatever it is. And then, because otherwise, what's the alternative? You step in and do it again. You have to really stop stepping in.
Yeah.
And that can be an uncomfortable transition, but it's worth it. A term I heard before, I hear a lot, is chore play. And I think it's funny, it's clever, but there's something about me that really doesn't like it.
Do you have rewarding men for doing
Sometimes it's in that context, but sometimes it's just this thing of women being like, doesn't it turn you on so much when you see your man picking up a Hoover? And I'm like, no, because I expect him to do that anyway. But like, it's that kind of thing of you can appreciate something. And me and my partner, I make a thing of we always, not always, but we regularly thank each other for doing anything.
Oh my gosh.
So I'd be like, thanks for taking out the bins. Thanks for, now we don't do it for everything. But
I'm so big into
it's so
this.
important.
Any opportunity.
But like this thing of chore play, I'm like, I'm not fully convinced. I think that's just the bar being really, really low. And again, saying, okay, if we frame it as this sexy thing, maybe they'll do it more. Or, the fact that he's helping me is so great that I actually want to have sex with him now. I don't know, does this even fit in with what we were saying? Am I disagreeing with myself? I just don't love the term.
No, I hadn't heard the term actually, but I have seen so many articles framing this idea of like, men, if you do more chores in the house, your woman is more likely to have sex with you.
It was Katy Perry recently. No, she's a whole other.
Katy Perry?
No,
really? About anything?
Exactly. Don't go to Katy Perry for your relationship advice. She's some bangers from the 2010s, but
such great 2008 feminism happening there.
Oh my God, yeah. Let's not even. But like, now I think this was a very obvious grasp at trying to go viral or trying to kind of win people over because she hasn't been doing that. But she said something about that when Orlando. As if I know him, Orlando does the dishes, she'll give him a blowjob. It was something along those lines. And I had radio stations ringing me asking me to talk about this, and I was like, no.
Wow.
Because
that's so grim.
I just I think she was saying it again in this way, trying to be kind of relatable or quirky or on the nose with it. I again just kind of find it a bit like fucking hell. Is that where the bar is again? Grim. Again, if that's actually genuinely a dynamic you enjoy, as in a kink or cool, obviously that's fine. But if genuinely that is, I don't know, there's something about it that just doesn't sit.
No, completely. Because I saw so many pieces recently of like, men, if you do the chores, your woman is more likely to have sex with you. And I was like, no, we're not rewarding you for doing chores with sex. Like, you're not like going, cashing in your chore chips for sex.
Yeah.
You should be stepping up and doing chores because your partner is an equal and not your maid, and you're an equal part of this relationship. And there is such a huge trend of men being rewarded and valorized for doing the bare basics that we treat as invisible for women because we assume they should be doing it. So like, women can take care of their kids all the time. And if a man takes his kid to the park once, they'll be like, oh my God, he's such an involved dad.
Yeah, I worry about the kind of
reinforces this.
It sends
this messaging.
Out. So that brings us kind of to I think we did our best to answer that. Obviously, we don't have the whole situation, but I think lots to think about. I think a lot of people will relate to this, judging from, again, the people I work with, women I work with mainly. To finish off, could you share, and I'm putting you on the spot now, can you think of the best piece of sex advice you've ever gotten? And it doesn't have to be related to what we just talked about, but...
Oh God, is there one piece of advice? I think there's two things, if I can cheat.
Yes, we'll allow two.
Thank you. I think one thing for women is... to try reframe your desire away from men. And I don't mean don't engage with your desire for men at all. But I think women, because we're so socialized from such an early, even that idea of sex ed, not talking about women's pleasure, and it's centering on men, like figuring out who you are as a sexual being.
Yeah.
Like what interests you, what makes you feel good, even all the things we've been talking about, like what are the contexts that make you feel really good and sexy and connecting with your body. And I think women were socialized to have so much shame around our bodies and, constantly feel like we're not enough. And I think connecting with your own sexuality and even I think women like, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing when you're in partnership, like taking joy and sexual enjoyment out of your partner's pleasure is a beautiful thing. But women were often socialized to go, oh, I feel sexy because I'm able to do this for him. And go, well, what about start just with you? What makes you feel sexy? And I think that's really important and so overlooked. And I think it does lead to women having sex where they're not feeling as connected or not feeling like this is about me and who I am.
Yeah.
So I think just trying to connect with your own sexual desire and expecting and accepting that that is an ongoing relationship for your entire life. Like you're going to change and that's going to change. But just making sure that your sex life isn't just centered on partnered sex and partnered sex with men if you're in a straight relationship. I think that's vital.
Masturbate. Well.
Masturbate, but also like what makes you feel good about your body generally, or like good as a person.
Yeah.
Like I always feel much like sexier and have much more desire if like I'm working and I'm proud of the work I'm doing.
Yeah, you're engaged with the world.
Independent and if I'm engaged, like, you know, I'm an academic nerd as well as a journalist. So if I'm like engaging with interesting ideas, I feel more interesting and alive and excited about the world. Whereas if I'm pouring all of my attention into my relationship or my partner, or I'm not doing the things that make me feel good, I can feel my like sexual spark like just diminishing because I don't feel like me. So I think just feeling like yourself. And I also think I'm going to give one sliver of credit to an ex I had. We were long distance and I had gone to the hairdresser and the hairdresser had fucked up my hair. I went in looking for an auburn. I came out with black hair, right? And they couldn't book me in to fix it for a couple of days. And my ex, we were together at the time, obviously, and he texted me and he was like, hey, would you want to do like a bit of video sex later? And I immediately went to, oh God, I look like shit. My hair is so crap. I don't feel like myself. I looked like Morticia Adams. I was getting a jolt when I looked in the mirror. And I was like, like I don't feel good and like myself, but like phone sex, like we could do phone sex. And he just went, Ro, like you don't have to compromise here. You're allowed to say no.
Yeah.
And I immediately caught myself and I had slipped into that thing of, oh, it's my duty to do this. And he said, you're allowed to say no. And like, let's just do it when you're feeling a bit sexier.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think the no opens you up to a different yes.
Yeah.
And I think
such a good point.
When you say no to sex that it doesn't feel connected, when you say no to sex with someone you might fancy and want it, but you don't think the connection is right, when you say no to sex that the situation isn't right, or you're going to feel a bit disconnected from your body, or it starts to feel like a duty, or it starts to feel like a resentment, respecting your own boundaries means that the sex you do have is sex that you're absolutely enthusiastic about, which is going to create this cyclical relationship between you and your sex life, that you know you're having sex that you are connected with. And I think both partners realizing that sometimes when we say no to sex, we're saying yes to a better form of sex that isn't now, but is later. And I think for women, this can be really hard for us to internalize. And a no isn't, and I think for partners, it can also be hard to internalize because, you know, rejection isn't always lovely. And sometimes rejection can hit us harder than it's meant to or whatever. But if we start considering people saying no or setting a boundary as a different form of yes, it all just feels much more gentle and much more possible.
That is such an incredible point, that like that no can be a gift, it can be a good thing, it can be a gateway, as you said, to something even better. So that's amazing advice. It definitely wasn't. I'd say if I asked some people this, I might be like, do pelvic floor squeezes. Which is fine. That's fine too. Yeah. No, but that's genuinely like really good advice. And that's the kind of advice I feel you can really only get and embody through experience. As in like, you know, it's not something you just kind of at 17 would get and understand, if that makes sense. It's something that clearly like, you know, you sit with and you process, and it'll be with you for life.
And I think that's the thing, like what we started off talking about. And again, I went through my casual sex phase and I said yes. I'm not saying they weren't consensual, they absolutely were. But I said yes, and I now look at them and gone, if I'd said no, what other possibility could have happened? Or if I said no to that particular sex act or that particular time, would I have been more enthusiastic about either that person or sex with that person at a different time or sex generally? Because I would be learning that every time I said a no, I was setting myself up for just a better sex life all around.
Yeah.
So, But also, pelvic floor exercises are great. Sure.
There's room for all of it.
Room for all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
I loved that. That was fantastic. I think there's so much packed into that. And again, so many kind of signposts to other bits of reading and things to learn about. Is there anything you want to plug really quickly before we finish? Or
you can't say plug to me at the end of a sex column or sex podcast. No, my column is in the Irish Times.
The innuendo.
I also write pieces for Image.ie that address sexuality and feminism and general shenanigans. But no, plug your own beautiful podcast because it's fab. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, for anyone listening, please rate, please review, please send in your dilemmas.
And also read your incredible book. You sent me a copy.
So much.
And it's so brilliant.
Yeah.
And I was just reading it and thinking, oh my God, if I'd had this in school, if other people had it in school, like I think for young men, it's so important as well. Like it's just such an incredible resource. And I'm sure it took so much work, but it's so brilliant.
So much. Brilliant. That's why I wrote it, because I'm like, this is the book I needed. I think sometimes that's what we need to write, is what we might have needed or benefited from. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This show is part of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.